If you've ever been told you're not enough, if you've ever been asked to change who you are just to make someone else comfortable, then this story is for you. Because the night my billionaire husband compared me to his ex, and asked me to look like her, was the night I realized that sometimes the most painful insult becomes the spark that changes everything. My name is Angela Lawson, and for years, people said I was living the dream. I was one of the youngest black attorneys to lead a major case in Maryland, standing in courtrooms with a presence that demanded respect. I was married to Richard Lawson, a billionaire tech mogul whose face graced magazine covers, whose company dominated headlines. We lived in a penthouse overlooking Baltimore's inner harbor, with floor-to-ceiling glass walls that made the city feel like it belonged to us. From the outside, we were untouchable. At dinners, people whispered, "They are the perfect couple." At galas, photographers angled to capture us, his chiseled jaw, my sharp gowns, the way we moved together like a brand, not just a marriage. We had what others envied: wealth, power, status. A fairy tale, at least that's what they thought. But behind the fairy tale, there were cracks. Small ones at first, like hairline fractures in glass. Richard's comments started subtly, things like, "Straighten your hair for the fundraiser, it's more professional," or, "Try this designer, the investors adore European cuts." I brushed them off. I thought he was just helping me navigate his world, a world built on image and perception. But those comments added up. And then, one evening, the fracture split wide open. I had just come home from a grueling 14-hour court day, still in my navy blue suit, my shoulders aching, my mind spinning from the trial I'd won. I wanted nothing but a shower, maybe a glass of wine, and silence. But when I walked into our bedroom, Richard was waiting. He was pacing, holding a manila folder, the kind he used only when he was nervous. His expression was tight, serious, as if preparing for a closing argument. "Angela," he said, sitting on the edge of our bed, "we need to talk about the gala." The Wright Foundation Gala wasn't just another party. It was the event: investors, foreign dignitaries, the city's elite. Richard had been talking about it for months, calling it the biggest night of his company's future. I sighed, kicking off my heels. "Richard, I'm exhausted. Can this wait until morning?" But he shook his head. "No. This year is different. We're courting investors from overseas, old money, traditional people. They have expectations." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. "What kind of expectations?" I asked carefully. That's when he opened the folder. Inside was a glossy photo. I felt my breath hitch before I even saw it. He pulled it out and handed it to me. It was Vanessa, his ex-fiancée. Blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, champagne-colored gown flowing like liquid light, pale skin glowing under ballroom chandeliers. She looked like she had stepped straight out of a Renaissance painting. Richard's voice was steady, businesslike. "I need you to dress like this." The words hung heavy in the air, so absurd and cruel that for a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. I looked from the photo to his face, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was a joke. But he didn't flinch. "You want me to dress like your ex?" My voice cracked, low and dangerous. "It's not about her," he said quickly. "It's about what sells." The board loved her elegance, her timeless style. These investors will respond to that. I stared at the photo again. At her pale skin, her flowing hair, her delicate frame. And then I turned toward the mirror, where my reflection stared back. My dark skin, glowing even under harsh bedroom light. My natural curls, coiled and unapologetic. My strong, sharp shoulders. Everything I was, everything I could never erase, even if I tried. For a long moment, the silence stretched like glass about to shatter. My chest felt heavy, my throat dry. The fairy tale everyone envied was crumbling, and for the first time, I didn't see a husband. I saw a man asking me to erase myself to become a ghost of someone else. And in that silence, I made a decision. I wouldn't break that night. I would bend, smile, and nod, letting him think he'd won. But deep inside, something had already shifted. Because the very thing he wanted me to hide was about to become the one thing the world could never ignore. The photo of Vanessa didn't leave my mind. Even when I tried to shove it away, it clung to me like a stain I couldn't scrub out. What made it worse was that Richard didn't back down. Every conversation, every glance, carried the same unspoken message: be more like her. At first, it came as suggestions, disguised as care. One morning over breakfast, he slid a fashion magazine across the table. The cover model was pale, tall, wearing a flowing pastel gown. "You'd look great in something like this for the gala," he said casually. Later, as I was pulling my curls into a bun, he came behind me, smoothing them down with his hand. "Straight might look more polished. You know, for the crowd we're entertaining." Each word was small, but together they pressed down like weights I couldn't shake. I wasn't Angela, the attorney who dismantled arguments and fought injustice. I was becoming Angela, the wife under inspection, a project to be fixed. Then came Margaret. Richard's mother had a way of smiling while cutting you open. She came by the penthouse one afternoon, sitting at the marble kitchen island with her glass of Pinot. Her eyes traveled over me slowly, as though I were on trial. "Vanessa always knew how to carry herself at these events," she said with a delicate sip. "So graceful, so timeless. The board adored her." Her words weren't questions. They were statements of fact, like courtroom evidence I couldn't cross-examine. Richard didn't defend me. He stirred his coffee and let the silence confirm it. I felt my chest tighten, the humiliation settling deep. I'd battled judges who dismissed me, lawyers who underestimated me, jurors who questioned me. I'd survived all of that with my head high. Yet here I was, shrinking in my own kitchen, in front of the man who was supposed to protect me. At night, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have. I held Vanessa's photo against my reflection. My curls suddenly seemed too wild, my skin too dark, my laughter too loud. I booked a salon appointment to straighten my hair. I cancelled it. I tried on dresses that mimicked hers, champagne silks, muted tones, but each one made me look like a stranger. The smallest things began cutting deeper. At a dinner with colleagues, Richard corrected how I held my wine glass. At a boutique, he tugged me away from a bold crimson dress, whispering, "Too much. Investors prefer something softer." It wasn't just about clothes or hair. It was about erasing me, piece by piece, until nothing authentic was left. The breaking point came one evening while I was plating dinner. Margaret, watching me, leaned toward Richard and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Sometimes I wonder if you married the right woman for this life." The knife nearly slipped from my hand. Richard froze, but again, he said nothing. My face burned, but I kept serving food, pretending I hadn't heard. Inside, though, I was unraveling. Later that night, when the penthouse was quiet, I sat in the bathroom with the lights off, staring at my reflection. My strong jawline, my brown eyes, the natural texture of my hair. All the features that once made me proud now felt like flaws under a microscope. For the first time, I wondered if maybe I really didn't belong in his world. And that thought hurt more than Margaret's whisper, more than Richard's silence, more than Vanessa's photo. Because it didn't sound like doubt anymore. It sounded like surrender. By the end of that week, I felt like I was unraveling. The whispers, the comparisons, the silence from Richard, all of it pressed on me until I hardly recognized myself. In the courtroom, I was fearless. At home, I was shrinking. And I hated it. One Saturday morning, without even thinking, I got in my car and drove to my Aunt Ruth's house. She lived 20 minutes away, in a modest red brick home that always smelled faintly of jasmine tea and old books. Aunt Ruth wasn't just family. She was a retired judge, the woman who'd taught me how to debate at the dinner table, how to walk into a room without bowing my head, how to stand in my truth no matter who was watching. When she opened the door, she studied me for less than a second before frowning. "Child, you look like you're carrying a case you can't win. What's wrong?" "The dam broke." I told her everything. The photo of Vanessa, the comments about my hair, the whispers from Margaret, the way Richard's silence cut deeper than any insult. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling, and I felt like I'd just finished giving closing arguments in front of the toughest jury of my life. Aunt Ruth didn't rush to comfort me. She let the silence stretch, the way only someone with wisdom can. Finally, she leaned forward, her eyes sharp as ever. "Angela, let me ask you something. When you stand in front of 12 jurors, do you think about whether your skin is too dark? Do you worry if your curls make you less convincing?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Of course not. In court, I'm just me." "Exactly." She pointed at me, her fingers steady. "You're just you. And that has always been enough. You didn't climb your way into those courtrooms by pretending to be someone else. You earned it because of who you are. Don't you dare forget that now." Her words sank deep, but she wasn't done. She stood, walking to the back room, and returned with a long garment bag.
My curiosity sparked as she slowly unzipped it. Inside was the most breathtaking gown I'd ever seen.
Indigo and gold, hand-woven fabric from Ghana, stitched into sleek modern lines that gave it both history and elegance. The kind of gown that didn't whisper, it commanded. Alongside it hung golden earrings shaped like scales of justice.
My breath caught.
Where did you get this?
Her eyes softened. It belonged to your grandmother.
She wore it once, then packed it away, waiting for the right woman to honor it. Angela, you carry her fire.
Her strength. Her pride.
If Richard can't see that, if those investors can't see that, then let them choke on their blindness. But don't you ever erase yourself to make them comfortable. My fingers trembled as I touched the fabric.
It wasn't just cloth. It was memory.
Legacy.
Power.
For weeks, I'd been shrinking under Vanessa's ghost, doubting if I belonged. But in that moment, with the weight of history brushing against my skin, I remembered who I was.
I wasn't a shadow. I wasn't a stand-in.
I was Angela Lawson, granddaughter of a queen, niece of a judge, woman of fire. I looked up, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. Can you help me make it perfect? Aunt Ruth's smile widened, her eyes glistening. I've been waiting for you to ask me that since the day you were born. The night of the gala finally came, and Baltimore's grandest hotel shimmered under the city lights. Black cars lined the curb, guests stepping onto the red carpet as cameras flashed. Reporters called out names, capturing the city's elite in gowns and tuxedos. For weeks, this was the night Richard had obsessed over. For me, it was the night I had been waiting for. Back at Aunt Ruth's, we had finished the gown to perfection. Indigo and gold, sleek yet regal, paired with golden earrings that glistened with every turn of my head. My hair was styled into a braided crown, my posture tall, my expression calm. When I looked in the mirror before leaving, I didn't see a shadow of Vanessa. I saw myself, fully, unapologetically. Richard had left early to greet investors, confident I would finally fall in line. That assumption would be his mistake. As my car pulled up, the driver glanced at me in the mirror. You look powerful tonight, he said softly. I stepped out, and in an instant, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations stilled. Cameras swung toward me, flashes bursting like fireworks. Guests whispered, some admiring, others confused. But none of them could look away. Inside, Richard was already mingling, his tuxedo flawless, his smile stretched tight. Margaret stood nearby in her silver gown, sipping champagne, her judgment sharp as a blade. The moment Richard saw me, his face faltered, shock, then anger, then something he couldn't name. He rushed over. What is this?
Angela, we talked about this.
You promised.
I stopped him cold. We didn't agree, Richard. You told me what you wanted.
Tonight, I'm showing you who I am.
His jaw tightened.
This is a business event, not. Maybe standing out is exactly what this room needs, I said evenly, my eyes never leaving his. Margaret's glass shook as she muttered, Good Lord, what has she done? Richard's eyes darted nervously toward the investors already staring, already whispering. But I didn't flinch. I walked forward with deliberate grace, the gown shimmering beneath chandeliers, each step commanding attention. For the first time, I felt the power tilt. Not toward Richard. Not toward Margaret. But toward me. And I knew, before this night ended, it wouldn't just be the gown they remembered. It would be my voice. The one that would bring this entire room to silence. The gala had been unfolding like Richard predicted, at least on the surface. Champagne flutes clinked, investors swapped stories, and the auctioneer warmed up the crowd. But beneath the glittering chandeliers, I could sense the undercurrent. Whispers followed me everywhere I walked, their tones a mix of awe, confusion, and disapproval. Richard's smile was frozen, his jaw tight, as he paraded me around the room. He introduced me, but his voice carried strain, like he was waiting for someone to sneer, She doesn't belong. Margaret trailed close, offering tight-lipped smiles, her eyes darting toward me like daggers. But then came the moment no one expected. The auction began. The cause this year was education, funding schools in Ghana and underprivileged neighborhoods in Baltimore. The auctioneer lifted a photo of a classroom, peeling paint, crowded desks, children smiling despite the lack. He made his pitch, but the energy in the room was flat. Investors checked their phones, conversations drifted. I looked around at the indifference, my stomach twisting. These children looked like me when I was their age, bright, eager, waiting for someone to believe in them. And here were the wealthiest people in the city, too distracted to care. Before I even realized what I was doing, I rose to my feet. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp enough to draw eyes. A hush spread across the table. Richard's face drained of color. "Angela," he whispered harshly, "what are you doing?" But I was already moving. My gown shimmered under the lights as I walked straight to the stage. The auctioneer faltered mid-sentence, handing me the microphone with wide eyes. The ballroom fell into silence, hundreds of eyes fixed on me. I steadied my breath, my heart pounding, and spoke. "My name is Angela Lawson. Many of you know me only as Richard's wife. But before that, I was, and still am, an attorney, a black woman who fought her way into courtrooms that told me I didn't belong. Tonight, I see those same children in these photos, children being told by circumstance that their futures are small. And I won't stay silent while the room ignores them." The quiet deepened. No clinking glasses. No shifting chairs. Just silence. I lifted a hand, letting the indigo fabric catch the light. "This gown isn't just beautiful. It's history. It's power. It's my grandmother's cloth, passed down through generations. And I chose to wear it tonight because it reminds me, and now reminds you, that brilliance cannot be dimmed. Not mine. Not theirs." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Margaret stiffened in her seat. Richard's lips parted, but no sound came out. I pressed forward, my voice strong. "These children in Ghana, in Baltimore, they are not charity cases. They are leaders in waiting. Innovators. Dreamers. And your money tonight isn't just donations. It's an investment. In them. In their light. In their future." For a heartbeat, the silence was complete. I could feel my words pressing into the air, demanding to be heard. And then, the applause started. Small at first, then swelling, then thunderous. Chairs scraped back as the entire ballroom rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even wiping their eyes. The bidding that followed was unlike anything the foundation had seen. Investors who moments ago were distracted now raised their paddles furiously, competing to outgive one another. The numbers soared, climbing higher and higher until the final amount was triple what Richard had dared to hope for. When I stepped down from the stage, flushed but steady, investors rushed to shake my hand. "Mrs. Lawson, your words moved me. You reminded us why we do this. Authenticity like yours is rare and powerful." I caught Richard's gaze across the room. He wasn't smiling his rehearsed smile anymore. His eyes were wide, filled with something between shock and pride. Margaret sat frozen, unable to say a word. And for the first time that night, I knew this wasn't Richard's victory. It was mine. Because I hadn't just walked into that ballroom. I had silenced it. The ballroom still buzzed long after the auction ended. Richard sat beside me, his posture stiff at first, his eyes distant as if he was trying to process what had just happened. Margaret, however, was harder to ignore. She barely spoke, her lips pressed thin, her glass of champagne untouched. For once, the sharp remarks she wielded like weapons were nowhere to be found. The silence on her face was its own kind of defeat. When the gala finally drew to a close, Richard guided me out to the waiting car. The ride home was quiet, the city lights flashing across his face. He fidgeted with his tie, stared out the window, then finally turned toward me. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice lower than I'd heard it in months. "Actually, I owe you more than one." I didn't respond. I kept my gaze on the skyline, letting him sit in his discomfort. He swallowed hard. "Angela, I was scared." "That's the truth. I thought if you stood out, if you didn't fit their mold, the investors would walk away. I convinced myself that asking you to change was about business. But really, it was about me, about my fear of not being enough in their world." His words trembled. And for once, he sounded less like a billionaire CEO and more like a man stripped bare. "You didn't just prove me wrong tonight," he continued. "You reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place. Your strength. Your fire. Your refusal to bend. You didn't save my deal, Angela. You made it bigger than I ever imagined. And I almost lost you because I couldn't see that." The sincerity in his voice pierced through me. For weeks, I had felt invisible, erased. But tonight, in that gown, with those children's futures in my words, I had never been more visible. Not just to the investors, but to him. I let the silence hang for a moment, weighing his confession. Then I turned, meeting his eyes. Richard, I won't ever erase myself again.
Not for you.
Not for anyone. He nodded quickly, his eyes glistening.
I know. And I don't want you to.
I promise you, I'll never ask you to be anyone but yourself again. The car rolled to a stop in front of our penthouse, but neither of us moved. For the first time in months, I saw something real in his eyes, not just pride, but humility. 6 months later, at another charity gala, I wore a different African-inspired gown, bold and radiant. This time, Richard didn't flinch.
He didn't panic.
Instead, he stood beside me proudly, introducing me to everyone with words that carried weight. This is Angela, my wife. The woman whose vision has reshaped the way we do business. The investors from that first night had become long-term partners. The projects in Ghana and Baltimore were thriving. Richard's company gained more than money, it gained respect. And I gained something too, the reminder that authenticity is more than beautiful.
It's power.
Because the night my husband compared me to his ex, he thought he was showing me who I wasn't. But when I walked into that ballroom, silenced the whispers, and spoke my truth, I showed the world exactly who I was. And that, more than any deal or title, was my greatest victory.
I read your comments.
Tell me in the comments, what's one moment in your life where standing true to yourself turned the tables completely?